Hey guys, and you're welcome to Check My Guns. My name is Carl, and as you might remember in a previous video about VZ54, I promised that I'll make another video on accessories and legends there are about VZ54. So this is it. Let's check it out. To start with accessories, we will need a little bit of help, and this book should provide it. This is a manual for snipers in Czechoslovakian military, especially made for this rifle VZ54, made in year 58. This is a copy, this is not original, but it's very interesting. If we look through, we see that there are many interesting information, main parts of the rifle, how do you disassemble it, how do you shoot with it. My favorite part is here in the back, how you shoot with it, like what sorts of positions you can take to shoot. You can shoot also on skis, for example. Yeah, that's interesting, funny part. But what we are looking for is here in the back, actually. Here, the list of accessories for the rifle VZ54. Here we see that there's a scope mount. Here's a cover against reflections. Here we have filters, 3 different types. We'll look at that in a second. Here's a scope cover. This is a case for the filters, closed and open, how it looks. This is a cover for a turret on scope. Remember that there's only one, even though there are 2 turrets on a scope. Here we have rubber eye relief, 2 different cleaning cloths, sling. This is a bag for all the accessories and also a scope. This is very interesting part. This is a calibration plate. We'll look at that also in a second. And here is a brush, cleaning brush, a key to adjust iron sights, a little screwdriver, bigger screwdriver, and cleaning rods. Cleaning rod, obviously here's a one piece with a handle. And here we have 3 pieces which screw together. And this is the cleaning cloth carrier, I would call it, which you screw on the cleaning rod. I don't really have these parts here, and also unfortunately these 2, but I think you can really imagine it, and if you can't, I can show you a picture here. But what I can show you is this. This is original bag for VZ54 accessories. And how do we know if it's original? Well, if we look, here is a stamp of manufacturer, Kozak, and year 1957. And here we have Czechoslovakian military acceptance mark and year 57. And here we even see the quality control stamp, Kontroloval Kodídek. That was probably the name of the person who was in charge of quality control. And if we open it, we see that here's a scope with a scope cover and scope mount. Here's the rubber eye relief, and here we have different sorts of pockets. Here we have pockets for cleaning rod, which we don't have here. Here is the cover against reflections. We'll look at that in a second. Also small screwdriver. Here we have a big screwdriver, and here comes the rest. Calibration plate, filters, and 2 different cloths, the yellow one and the standard white one. The yellow one is called Yasol, and there were always these 2 cloths coming in a package. So now we can look at each part individually. Let's start with a scope. So what we have here is a scope cover made out of leather. Unfortunately, I don't have the one with all parts. There is supposed to be a rubber plug which fits in the end of the scope. So if I take that off, put it aside. Here we have a standard VZ54 scope with a scope mount, and here is the cap which covers the top turret. If I put it back. So what can we put on a scope out of these accessories? So I would put this cover against reflections. I have to note that it's not against the reflections coming out of other objects, but it's against reflections your scope might make, which was essential for sniper to stay hidden. So you just slide it at the end of the scope and it is held by this piece of metal in this milled ridge of a scope mount, so it stays on one place. What else you can put on is this rubber eye relief, which actually is pretty old, so it doesn't really stay on its place. But what could you do was that you could fit a filter there. So here we have a case with filters. There are 3 different ones inside. Here's yellow, slightly less yellow, and sort of gray filter. So how do you use it? If we take one out and we just put it into the eye relief and then we put it on a scope, your scope is now filtered against probably some reflections, this time coming from other objects, or you can make your view better in different light conditions or weather conditions. So that's what it was for. I will continue with screwdrivers. Here's a bigger one. You see that it's just a piece of metal bent into a certain shape. You could use it to disassemble your rifle. Pretty handy thing to have on you. And here's the smaller one you could use to adjust different things. For example, on a scope, if you turn your scope and it gets to its limits, you can unscrew these 3 screws and put the cover there in a different way, so you can still dial or turn your turret, which is pretty interesting. But the most interesting thing for me is this calibration plate. Here we see some numbers, 785 up to 792, and minimum and maximum on each side. But what would you do with that? How do you use it? If I grab the standard 762x54R cartridge, I can measure the projectile with this plate. So I know how big it is and I can sort my ammo according to that. So you get the best accuracy out of your rifle. There's actually another story behind that, and also if your gun and your barrel is worn out and not so accurate, you can choose the bigger projectiles to get the best accuracy out of your rifle. There's one more thing you can use this for, if I understood the manual correctly, and that is if I grab a bolt and we look, here's the firing pin sticking out, and you can measure how much it should be sticking out. So now we have here a minimum, so if I put it here and measure it, it's slightly above the minimum and it's not over maximum at all. So that's how you measure how much your firing pin should be sticking out, so you don't get any misfires, which is pretty cool and I really like it. So this is all from accessories. I'll pack it back and we will continue with legends.
Alright guys, let's start with legends. Maybe some of you listened carefully and noticed on this picture of accessories something weird. We went through the army manual, but there was nothing about weird leather-like wallet for Yasol cloth. But this isn't something unusual. I have seen it multiple times online, so it might be a real part of accessories. Maybe snipers were equipped with it later without changing the manual. Same story is behind this metal box for Yasol cloth. Not mentioned in manual, but quite often seen with other accessories. In both cases there is also a manual how to use Yasol cloth to clean your scope lenses. Another thing are numbers on VZ54. It consists of prefix and 4 digits. We need to know that the majority of these rifles are today mismatched. Many people think that it's because these rifles were made out of existing mosin-nagant rifles and believe the original markings were used for this production, so it was mismatched from beginning. But we can find some matching rifles. If the rifle itself is matching, most of the time the scope mount is not, because it was very easy to take it off and put another on. But we still can find some with all matching numbers, which is a bit of a miracle. I personally have never seen one. Now I should probably mention that the scope was never matching because Meopta, as a manufacturer, was using a different numbering system. Interesting thing also comes with the spare parts. There were a whole crates of spare parts for VZ54. My friend even showed me a list of spare parts from his collection, and you were basically able to build a new rifle out of it. The interesting thing is that we assume parts in those crates had a different or no markings on them. I have seen a spare rifle stock with no numbers on it and also a scope with no F prefix. So that is kinda legend made by us. We are not able to prove it, but it seems logical. Another legend is that East Germany border guards were using VZ54 with their own Zeiss scope. We know that East Germany had a small amount of these rifles. We can also find pictures online, and as much as I was digging, I couldn't prove if it's true. There is simply no public evidence for this theory, so for now it's just a legend. Could be that someone very professionally adjusted original scope mount for a new scope, because that was usually the first thing you would do, put a new scope on the rifle. But we just don't know. You might remember how I was talking about modified versions made in 90s called VZ54/90 or 91. Well, as I said, no one knows what happened to those rifles, but if you dig deep, you can find pictures of these rifles in USA. Some of them were probably sold to USA during 90s. Those lucky bastards, I have never seen one in my life. One last legend is also about specific modification. Some people say that there was earlier modification before the year 1990 made by state police. The stock was cut so the new heavy barrel from UK-59 could be mounted on. I saw only like 2 pictures of this modernized version and it looks to me like someone did it homemade. I don't really think that it was original police modification.
Alright guys, so this is all for now. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, press like and subscribe so we don't miss any other videos about interesting guns. And we will see each other next time. Whoa.